invisible adversary. And should we be worried? Well, we're going to cover that. All right, so the agenda today is secured channels. We're going to look at encryption and see whether or not we have full visibility into all channels when it comes to adversarial opportunities. And we'll back this up with some real-world threats that have been realized in the wild. Then we'll get into defenders' opportunities. So what can we do to get better overall visibility? All right, a couple things here. We know hybrid work was accelerated during the pandemic, which started with work from home, and now we see today this is fully hybrid. And has this opened up an opportunity for the adversary? I would say it does. We also know there's direct access to cloud-based services, direct to internet access from the branch, and again, work from home or anywhere, all add layers of security complexity. Something that's not unique to only hybrid work may be lurking behind the scenes with no one the wiser. So it doesn't really apply only to hybrid work. This applies to every compute system, whether it's hybrid or not. So in this session, we're going to talk about the challenges that come with encryption and not just TLS. So let's dig into secured channels. All right, we got users and machines. We've got TLS 1.2. This is something we're all probably pretty familiar with, that access workloads and services. Now, in order to get visibility into TLS 1.2, we have to do TLS proxy, or what we call is machine in the middle. The problem with this is decryption has a performance impact. This is less than what we see with TLS 1.3. We're going to talk about that in a second. What makes TLS 1.2 a lot easier to decrypt is that sessions are derived from a long-term key, and therefore there's not as much re-encryption and decryption that's taking place. And this is really done with perfect forward secrecy, which is not enabled by default with TLS 1.2. Now, we use hardware crypto accelerators to help drive the ability to decrypt faster without as much of a performance impact, but there's some limitations in most hardware today, and that's the PCI Express. We're going to get into that a little bit more detail later. The other thing that we can do in TLS 1.2 is that we can look at the server name indicator, which will give us an idea of where you're going on the internet, and therefore we can make decisions on whether or not we're going to allow that connection. SNI, or server name indicator, is not reliable and can be easily spoofed, but it is a mechanism that we can use. And again, TLS 1.2 falls in line with HTTP version 2. Now, TLS 1.3 gets a little bit tricky here. Again, we got users and machines talking to workloads and services. Now, again, there's machine in the middle that can do TLS-based proxy. The problem is there is a significant performance impact in comparison. Why is that? Well, the session key is not derived from the long-term key, but rather from an ephemeral key generated for each session. So there's a little bit more heavy lifting here, and this is because of perfect forward secrecy, which is enabled by default. Now, hardware crypto accelerators, again, have issues, and it's all due to that PCI Express bus, which is the limiting factor here. There's no server name indicator because this is encrypted as part of TLS 1.3. It makes it a little bit more efficient and faster, but now we don't have visibility at all, and decryption becomes more and more important. Now, this is certainly part of HTTP version 3. Now, certificate pinning. Things get a little bit more challenging here. So when there's certificate pinning in play, you're not going to be able to decrypt that session whatsoever. Now, this is a client-side security mechanism that requires the application or device to trust only specific TLS certificates. So there's essentially a fingerprint here that has to match, and so we can't derive our own certificate because the fingerprints won't match. Now, this is typically used with highly secure websites and applications, such as finance or personal data. It's commonly used with mobile applications to protect against specifically machine in the middle. And inherently, this helps things become more secure. Same with TLS 1.3. That's the goal, is to ensure privacy and security. And this has been available for some time. Decryption, not available. QUIC, QUIC. Now, most of this is being bypassed in most organizations. You might be saying, what the heck? What is QUIC? Well, QUIC stands for Quick UDP Internet Connection, developed by Google, and it's supposed to improve speeds and reliability of web connections. In fact, it does. Now, Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox all leverage QUIC by default. Now, Safari can also do this, but it's not enabled by default, at least the time of this recording. Now, here's the challenge, is that if you're not blocking this outbound, this protocol's in play because those browsers actually use QUIC first before it'll try TLS. If it is blocked, however, it will default back to TLS. Now, more than half of Google servers use this today. It's a multiplexed connection between two endpoints. Better performance, as I mentioned, and low latency, and it is part of HTTP version 3. Decryption, again, not available. There's not a QUIC proxy, at least not today. Now, what is the adversary's opportunity here? And let's back this up a little bit. So let's look at this for an example. There's all kinds of other reasons, like, for example, if you're using cert pinning or QUIC, never mind TLS for a moment here, and you're connecting to a bad site that may not even be command and control. It might have an exploit kit server on it or something like that. Again, you have no visibility. But if we look at command and control, which is a strong proponent of leveraging any encrypted channel, there's a ton of opportunity here, right? Leverage to communicate with compromised systems. That's a goal of command and control. It delivers commands and instructions to these systems. And what is it for? Well, it could be used for defense evasion, downloading additional malware, creating botnets, exfiltration, shutdown or reboot systems, reconnaissance, lateral movement. All of this could be done through a command and control channel. And if it's encrypted, we've got some challenges as defenders. Now, if we look at multiple techniques available for C2, I mentioned that we're focused on the encrypted side, but application layer protocols, communications through removable media, data encoding, data obfuscation, you got dynamic resolution, encrypted channels, fallback channels, ingress tools to transfer, multi-stage channels, non-application layer protocols, non-standard ports, protocol tunneling, proxies, you've got remote access software, traffic signaling, and web services. Now, these are all of the techniques that are available for that tactic of command and control. Our focus here is around the encrypted channels. Most of these other areas, we have opportunity to mitigate risk. And we do have an opportunity to mitigate risk using endpoint protection technology. The problem with protecting at the endpoint is that you have to be 100% correct 100% of the time. And there's no technology vendor today that can provide that capability. So I want to be able to protect as far away from the asset that I'm protecting in hopes that I can find through those layers an opportunity to defeat the adversary's will. By the time it gets to the endpoint, hopefully I've created enough noise that I know something's going on, but at the very least, my endpoint still has an opportunity to mitigate risk. Now it gets challenging, so let's investigate this a little bit further. One of the challenges is that it mimics normal encrypted traffic to avoid detection. So QUIC, for example, or TLS using cert pinning, these are all behaviors that you would expect in any environment. Now let's talk about TLS. Now it has been leveraged by the adversary to evade detection and analysis. Some examples of this include TrickBot, Emotet, and then Dridex. All of these and many, many more have used just TLS to evade detection. So an opportunity might be here is that I can do TLS proxy and, have a performance impact to some degree depending on the platform, even with crypto accelerators, and inspect the payload, hope to see that it's malicious in its intent and block it before it even gets into the environment, never mind the command and control that's going to take place. Now, certificate pinning specifically has been used as well in the wild, and we've got a couple of examples of this. A lot of these are banking Trojans and have been around for a long, long time, but it does show the evolution of the adversary's ability when adapting to the controls that we put in place. So again, this has been active since 2014, primarily used to spread other malware such as ransomware. And versions supported certificate pinning to communicate with C2, so command and control. Then we got Pegasus, mobile spyware. It exploited the operating system. It reads text, tracks calls, collects passwords, location tracking, targets devices, cameras, a microphone, harvests information from applications as well. Now, this is known to use certificate pinning to communicate to its C2 servers as well. Now, a couple more examples. TrickBot, again, another banking Trojan, been around for a long time, since 2016. And this just shows that a lot of the defensive capabilities that we leverage are easily evaded. That's why this stuff sticks around so long, right? Blocking an IP or a URL or a domain, those are lower level controls when you look at the pyramid of pain, right? The pain that you invoke on the adversary when you defend at certain layers. The higher you move up in the layers, when you start getting into tactics and techniques and procedures, the top level, it makes it very hard for the adversary to overcome. But communicating over a C2 encrypted channel is something that they're very, very good at. Zeus Panda. So again, another banking Trojan, first discovered in 2016, primarily used for stealing banking creds and other sensitive information. Versions of Zeus took advantage of certificate pinning to communicate with its C2 servers. So TrickBot, Zeus, Emotet, all very similar and leveraging certificate pinning to bypass our ability to decrypt. Adversaries using QUIC. Now, again, this is a technique that the adversary is using. Emotet is an example of that. They then started leveraging QUIC to communicate with its C2 servers as well. Now, this just shows you how the adversary continues to adapt to evade detection and prevention and keep themselves under the radar. Now, again, I mentioned we have lots of opportunities to mitigate risk. It could be an IP, a domain, a URL. It could be some advanced inspection. It could be at the endpoint. The bottom line is that we need to make sure that we're leveraging as much of our defensive capabilities as possible. And so in this case, if you don't have the ability to provide visibility into QUIC in some form or fashion, then you may want to block this outbound. Now, what is the defender's opportunity here? Well, let's just talk about the cyber kill chain, right? We've got reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation. Now, these all have to happen before we get to command and control. They've got to do reconnaissance. They've got to weaponize something and then deliver it through email or other forms. Exploit the asset, do the installation, and then the magic happens, right? The command and control. So again, that first whole front piece, we have an opportunity to start mitigating some of our risk in multiple different defensive capabilities. But if they do fail, which they will, what about this command and control channel? If it's using QUIC, TLS 1.3, certificate pinning, what are we going to do here? Well, we've got a couple of options. And then finally, we've got actions on objectives. So there's tons of opportunity for the defenders to mitigate before that command and control. And we talked about those. But what happens when those defenses fail? All right, let's talk about certificate pinning and QUIC. What is the opportunity here for defenders? Now, we have a client leveraging Firefox that makes a connection outbound through the firewall. Now, typically what happens, most firewalls see an encrypted channel and nothing more. Now, if we look at the client hello information, we can see that there's a difference between other client hellos. And so we can fingerprint this to get an idea of the client hello as well as the destination that we're going to, which gives additional context and able to provide the following insight. The process, firefox.exe, the version, the category, in this case browser, the operating system, and the destination FQDN, which is cisco.com, gives us a high level of confidence that this is actually safe, and therefore we allow it to go through. The goal here is to generate unique fingerprints for client applications based on those outer packet fields and use it in policy matching and context enrichment. Now, if we look at the other connection from the same client, perhaps, it's a Tor connection. Again, we look at that client hello, the destination, we've got better context, we have 100% confidence, it's tor.exe. The version, we know category anonymizer, operating system, and destination FQDN. Now we have an opportunity to mitigate risk. Not only provide the visibility, but start looking at mitigating against that particular connection versus the other connection. Now, there's significant benefits to this because now we don't worry about certificate pinning as much or QIC and the challenges around decrypt. We also now have an opportunity to mitigate, but also we have the ability to do this without pushing TLS-based traffic to a TLS proxy and blocking it earlier. So the opportunity is not only to see bad earlier on in our defensive capabilities, but save the performance where it's required. Think of this as security intelligence, just sophisticated, right? Earlier on control that doesn't need full decryption in order to make a decision. Now, a little bit more around the machine learning capability, the intelligence portion. So there's visibility into TLS and QUIC without decryption. It does utilize machine learning to determine the application or client process that's generating the client hello. It identifies known processes and client applications. Policy actions allow, block, inspect, available based on client application. And then additionally, identifies malware based on secure malware analytics fingerprinting. So once we get a fingerprint of malware, we can identify that as well. Now with the capability, we're looking at things like fingerprint string computed from the packet fields. We're going to analyze ports, consider that DNS top-level domains. We've got data-driven, continuously trained models. You've got that destination context, right? You're going to a destination that's bad, then most likely you're bad. TLS and QUIC support. So where can you do this? Well, you can do this on the network firewalls and or network switches. And you send flow data or analytics data and leverage the machine learning capabilities of the encrypted visibility engine. Now, what about TLS 1.3? What about inspection and performance? Well, there's a couple of other options that we have here. One is TLS Server Identity Discovery. So if you look at TLS 1.2, there was some insight into the client hello, the server name indicator, and that let us know that you were going to www.cisco.com as an example. And so you can make a little bit of a determination of what's happening here. This is now encrypted as part of TLS 1.3, so it's not an element that you can use. But what if we created a side channel? You have this TLS 1.3 client hello that hits your next-gen firewall platform, if supported. It then creates a sidecar, dropping it down to TLS 1.2 to identify the server, cache the results, and make a decision. So again, if it's bad, we're going to block it. Right here, there's no need to do the full decrypt here. So if permitted without TLS decryption, we let it go. We pass that original client hello and disengage. If permitted with TLS decryption, we engage the TLS proxy and generate a new client hello. So we actually go ahead and perform TLS 1.3 proxy or decryption or machine in the middle, whatever you want to call it, but we perform that action. And now you can run, intrusion prevention and some of the more of the advanced inspection capabilities against that particular connection. Now, policies enforced without decryption overhead, and it provides us the ability to see the server name indicator and distinguish name in TLS 1.3 because of that sidecar. Now let's talk about TLS proxy or machine in the middle because it's still required. Now the challenge here If you don't have TLS Server Identity Discovery or Encrypted Visibility Engine that helps get rid of the noise, early on detection and prevention capabilities, then you're going to have to decrypt. Like, again, you're not going to decrypt cert pinning and you're not going to decrypt QUIC. TLS-based traffic, you're certainly going to decrypt. The challenge here is CPU could run hot. Crypto accelerators can run hot. They can perform with very low latency, but your bottleneck is going to be that PCI Express bus. And that's the issue. You're going to be sending all the traffic here to do TLS proxy or machine in the middle, and the burden is significantly higher here, even though you've got a crypto accelerator. So again, it's not very efficient. It's slow PCI Express bus that creates the bottleneck, and you're sending already known malicious traffic potentially to an accelerator, only increases the noise and the performance impacts that we see. So let's fast forward into today's world. Well, you can use an FPGA, you've got direct interlink and a crypto accelerator, and now you've removed that bottleneck. You're doing high-speed interlink connections between those accelerating capabilities and removing the bottleneck of PCI Express. It's further optimized though, because if you have the ability to do TLS Server Identity Discovery and Encrypted Visibility Engine, we've now further streamlined our ability to perform at much greater levels than existing next generation firewall platforms. Now we finally get to decrypt. And the goal here now is that we've got an optimized platform now inspecting traffic that actually needs to get to this level for inspection, right? It's past all the security intelligence stuff, IP, URL, DNS, get rid of it, right? I don't even want to inspect that if it's bad. And now you've got TLS Server Identity Discovery and Encrypted Visibility Engine performing very much the same thing, but on encrypted traffic, which also includes QUIC and certificate pinning. Now I'm able to pass that traffic through, run it through that interlink high-speed connection to the crypto accelerator, and perform inspection. The goal here now is now you get TLS hardware-based accelerations that's high-performing, centralized TLS policy for enforcement. Some examples include blocking self-signed encrypted traffic, or exclude banking and healthcare because the policy in the organization says that that information should remain secure. But do that based on reputational based rules, right? Make sure that if you're going to a banking site that it's got a high level of reputation as well. And if the adversary is trying to spoof or change that, those earlier capabilities, as I mentioned, may also mitigate that risk. So the conclusion, the threat of encrypted channels is real. And I don't think that we've been paying enough attention to it. And the adversary has continued to evolve to take advantage of it. We need better visibility to increase our chances against the adversary. There are opportunities for the defenders. We talked about them. Early detection or prevention capabilities for encrypted traffic. That includes TLS Server Identity Discovery, Encrypted Visibility Engine, and if you need to proxy for TLS or machine in the middle for full decrypt, you can do it in an optimized manner and make sure that the platform is performing at the levels that you expect and for the reasons required to mitigate risk.